Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me make sure I am up. Hope everyone is doing okay. This is April the 2nd at 12:14 a.m. I am wide awake for some reason. And like most people, when they're wide awake, they decide to do the news. Let's do the news. Now, there's another story I really want to get to. The Israel murdering, the mowing down of all those peaceful protesters. That is on my list. This one has been queued up, so this is what I'm going to do because it's queued up and it's already in my head. But the other one will either be tonight or tomorrow. All right, good. Sound is good. Let's hop across the pond. Let's hop across the pond. And before we hop across the pond, let's fix that. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, let's hop across the pond. I'm getting better with my British accent. I've been skeptical of the story from early on. And my reasoning for being skeptical of the story is because I think you should be skeptical of power in general. And fact is, power structures, the things around us, have not necessarily been the most trustworthy and have not shown themselves to be worthy of just giving them the benefit of the doubt. Skepticism is what they've earned. Skepticism is what they should get. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. If they're going to position us against another power, then they should have some level of evidence to show that this aggression or this force or the positioning that they're taking is warranted. She hasn't shown it. Assertions is not the same thing as evidence. Look, I am a product of my culture and my time. And the fact is, being a product of this culture and time, it warrants and it demands a certain amount of skepticism when dealing with people in these positions. One conflict after the next will spawn from this making stuff up in order to get people ginned up for some level of war conflict. It's like if the people abroad and somewhere else, if they're not fucking with me, I don't want to be fucking with them. The fact is, I would rather not leverage the bravery that these people show when they join the military with this idea in their heads that they're actually fighting to protect this country. I don't want to leverage that bravery to go kill and murder and maim and break other people, to break other states, to break other organizations. I don't want to do that. I would rather spend my resources dealing with the affairs of this particular country and this particular state. We have several problems of our own that we need to resolve, not fucking with someone else. So we hop across the pond and we're back with Theresa May, the British government, and spies. You might as well say the Tory government and its spies. A spy goes down in Britain. I love that. I love that line. As soon as I heard it in my head, I love that line. A spy goes down in Britain. He's poison. Everyone gasped. Oh, it was Novichok. It was Novichok. It was Novichok. That sounds like the Russians. The Ruskies did it. The Ruskies did it. Theresa May comes out after the spies poisoned the spy and his daughter, and she says, it is very likely that Russia has done this. Now, again, I'm here. I'm in America, where they have this Russia hysteria going on, and this insane degree of hysteria around Russian hacking. Russia colluded with Donald Trump to hack the election. That's what they've said. Now, it's been 2 years in, they've proven nothing. And all of this is literally boiled down to a bunch of Facebook and Twitter ads, half of which that took place, the majority of which took place after the election. That's what they found. That's what they've used to justify all of the hysteria about Facebook and Twitter ads. We have destroyed governments. Like, understand what I'm saying. We have destroyed, literally destroyed governments. And they're complaining and creating this level of hysteria about Russian hacking. And what boils down to Facebook and Twitter ads. They've shown no collusion between Donald Trump. And in fact, I would make the argument that they've committed a felony in using the federal government in order to spy on an opposition or opponent of a political party. They used the federal government, the FBI, in order to get Hillary Clinton off, and while at the same token getting Donald Trump on, meaning spying on the Trump campaign. Using the Russia hysteria to cover all of it. It's all Russia. It's all Russia. When WikiLeaks was publishing the information, if you notice, all of the information that was coming about the Clinton Foundation, all of the information that was coming about them cheating Sanders, it was tried to be covered with, it's all Russia. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It's all Russia. You don't want to be a Rus. You don't want to help Vladimir Putin. So this is where I am. You can understand that I'm skeptical of this because this is nonsense. They've shown nothing. You have a bunch of people who are motivated to believe certain things because that belief of certain things helps them pursue the world, or at the very least helps their idea of the world to be legitimized. So Hillary Clinton didn't lose because she was a horrible person or a horrible opponent. No, she lost because of Russia and that fucking Bernie Sanders. That's why she lost. It had nothing to do with Hillary Clinton. She is an awesome fucking person. She is the best person in the goddamn universe. And she was the most qualified person in any physical matter reality. And a few non-physical matter realities. That's what they say. That's what they thought. And so this idea of her losing to reality show hosts blows a hole through that particular ideology. So how do you cover it up? Again, Trump and Russia. The media is motivated to do this because they hate Donald Trump's guts. Donald Trump has called them fake news, and that bugs the shit out of them because they're news networks and they don't like to be called fakes. Too bad. Some of them are fakes. Some of the shit they say. No, Donald Trump and I are not talking about the same thing when we say fake news. I'm using this term of lacking of context, lacking of honest perspective when you're looking at the world and you're judging the world from this lens that is tilted in the way of America first. Yeah, Donald Trump might have coined a phrase, but the media uses that particular point of view. Whatever America is doing by definition is right. Ergo, we don't necessarily do anything wrong. We may make mistakes. We may do things that are somewhat improper and fuck up, but all things being equal, if we're doing it, it's right. Now that's an insane perspective. That's an absolutely insane perspective. And yet that's the perspective that they take. And so they're motivated. They're incentivized in two ways. One, they hate Donald Trump. So yeah, they want to find someone Donald Trump. But two, this idea of Trump and Russia puts asses in seats. Your reality in a weird way in this country has been monetized. Meaning this is the profitable thing that they show. Not because it's something that you need to know. Not because there's something there. This is the profitable thing. All of them have said covering Donald Trump is great for their business line. Why do you think Rachel Maddow has had gangbuster ratings? Trump is great for her because all those people that hate Trump's guts will go to Rachel Maddow because she would spin one theory, one idea, one thing that she can wrap around in some kind of way to connect to Donald Trump. It fulfills their fantasies of the world. They've been monetized to like this idea of Russia. From the standpoint of Britain, Theresa May has had several problems that she's had to deal with. She's had the Brexit negotiations, which, if we're being honest, has an unresolvable issue built into the Brexit negotiations. Not to mention, she's been losing popularity like nobody's business. And if the election was held today, she would likely lose her prime ministership to Jeremy Corbyn. Not just that, with the Brexit negotiations by themselves is somewhat of an existential threat because there's an Irish party that's propping up the Tories in order to take control or keep control. She has several problems. She has several problems. Now all of a sudden a spy goes down in Britain. A spy goes down in Britain. I saw the headline today that the spy's daughter is getting better. As soon as I read the headline, I was like, what? 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 So we're supposed to believe that a military-grade poison took down this spy and took down his daughter. And somehow, through the beautiful, awesome people at the NHS, and I say nothing bad about the NHS. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they were able to deal with this particular issue in such a fast and effective way that she's now recovering. Here's the catch. Those nerve agents are built to kill. Like, they're literally designed to murder. A tiny bit of it would destroy the entire city. I'm being somewhat hyperbolic, but you understand my point. A small amount of it is used to kill a large number of people. But the NHS was able to analyze what was wrong with this person, derive some kind of thing after they figured out what was wrong with this person, and get this person kicking and screaming like normal. Okay. Okay. Look, I'm skeptical. This sounds a little hokey to me. I mean, when you're talking about like those sarin gas attacks and these other gas attacks, these people weren't recovering like talking about, nor were they able to respond that quickly to this particular issue. How on earth were they able to devise that this was Novichok? Look, whatever. Russia has several questions for Britain that Britain refuses to answer. So I'm going to ask those questions myself on behalf of, this is going to be Zero Hedge. There are two articles, one from Zero Hedge and one from the Ron Paul Institute. And both of them make a point that I've been making for the past several videos, asking questions on this particular issue. Assertion is not the same thing as evidence. That's the key point. This is Zero Hedge. Damn, it took a lot of time to do that. But nevertheless, this is Zero Hedge. Russia has 14 questions on fabricated Skripal case. Russian embassy in London has sent a list of questions, 14 to be specific, to the British Foreign Ministry on the poisoning of Sergei and Yuli Skripal, which include a demand to clarify whether samples of the nerve agent Novichok have been developed in the UK. UK has its own chemical laboratory, by the way. It's even did chemical tests on its own citizens. The Russian embassy statement calls the incident that started the recent diplomatic row a fabricated case against Russia. The questions published in the Russian Foreign Ministry's official website have been translated below. Why has Russia been denied the right of consular access to the two Russian citizens who came to harm on British territory? What specific antidotes and in what form were the victims injected with? How did such antidotes come into the possession of British doctors at the scene of the incident? Yeah, notice I've asked this question too. We have amazing doctors and medical facilities in the United States. The issue with medical care in the United States is not necessarily whether or not the doctors are awesome at their jobs. It has more to do with people having access without necessarily having to pay $50,000 or $100,000 for a bill. You go to a hospital, aspirin is like $20 a pill, literally, in some hospitals. You buy aspirin for like $1. That stuff is overblown and overinflated purely to milk the person. And so if people can't afford it, they tend not to go. If somebody had a medical issue and they had to make this choice between drugs and rent, they choose their rent. I'll deal with the medical issue. The issue is not the medication themselves. I'm making a point that even with the awesome doctors in the States, if somebody had been poisoned in the United States, they wouldn't. I have a hard time believing that, A, they would be able to identify what it is, especially if this is this military grade poison Novichok. I have a hard time believing that they will be able to identify what it is in the time frame and get the antidote to that particular thing in order to bring this person back to care. How on earth were the doctors able to figure out what this was this fast, and why would their mind immediately jump to this idea of him being poisoned? I'm just saying. I mean, that's a good question. Let's keep going. On what grounds was France involved in the technical cooperation in the investigation of the incident in which Russian citizens were injured? Did the UK notify the OPCW, Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, of France's involvement in the investigation of the Salisbury incident? What does France have to do with the incident involving two Russian citizens in the UK? What rules of the UK procedural legislation allows for the involvement of a foreign state into an internal investigation? What evidence was handed over to France to be studied, and for what investigation to be conducted? Were French experts present during the sampling of biomaterial from Sergei and Yuli Skripal? Was the study of the biomaterials from Sergei and Yuli Skripal conducted by the French experts, and, if so, in which specific laboratory? Does the UK have the materials involved in the investigation carried out by France? Have the results of the French investigation been presented to the OPCW Technical Secretariat? Based on what attributes was the alleged Russian origin of the substance used in the Salisbury established? Does the UK have controlled samples of the chemical warfare agent, which British representatives refer to as Novichok? Have the samples of a chemical warfare agent of the same type as Novichok, in accordance with British terminology, or analogs been developed in the UK? The UK is not going to answer those questions honestly. Or, look, I have no faith that any country will answer some of those questions honestly. That being said, you're accusing them of poisoning somebody on your soil. they have the right to ask questions. One of the main questions that I have is, how are you making a connection between this and Russia automatically? On what grounds? Like, what are you using to identify, yeah, this is the Russian thing right here. This tells me that this came from Moscow and that Vladimir Putin licked his stomach, rubbed it on it himself. How do you know that? How do you know that? These are fair questions. These are not outlandish questions by somebody being out. These are fair questions. Even if Russia did it, you still need to show evidence. You need to hold a court to some degree. You need to be able to present your case of saying why this is right and why Russia is guilty of this. Assertions are not the same. It's not the same thing as evidence. They're fair questions. Let's go to the Ron Paul Institute. Ron Paul Institute has an article. The last act of Novichok drama revealed. The Skripal's resurrection. A spy goes down in Britain. A spy, his daughter, starts to get up. She was poisoned by this military-grade poison that is used to take out lots of people under normal circumstances when you're in some kind of war zone. But in this case, they survived. Let's take a look. Let's see. Come on. There we go. The last act of Novichok drama revealed. The Skripal's resurrection. Like Jesus. It seems that the Novichok fairy tale the British government plays on us provides a happy ending. The astonished and mysterious resurrection, the victims of a military-grade 5 to 8 times more deadly than VX gas nerve agent of the type developed by Hollywood. Happy Easter. Yuli Skorper no longer is in critical condition, says Salisbury doctors. The condition of Yuli Skorpel, who was poisoned with a nerve agent in the Salisbury along with her father, is improving rapidly, doctors said. Salisbury NHS Foundation Trust said on Thursday the 33-year-old was no longer in critical condition, describing her medical state as stable. Christine Blanchard, medical director of Salisbury Direct Hospital, said, "I'm pleased to be able to report an improvement in the condition of Yuli Skorpel. She has responded well to treatment but continues to receive expert clinical care 24 hours a day. Her father's condition is still described by the hospital as critical, but stable." They were poisoned. Nerve agent. 5 to 8 times more deadly than VX. They were able to assess what was poisoning her, get her the antidote for the thing that was poisoning her, this rare nerve agent of sorts. And now she's recovering. Okay. Only yesterday, the Skripal chances to survive was claimed to be 1 out of 99. Nerve agents are deadly weapons. A dose of 10 milligrams of the United States developed VX gas will kill 50% of those exposed to it. The Novichok agent is said to be several times more deadly than VX. It seems less and less likely that the British government claims about Novichok poisoning is actually true. Way more likely are the other explanations, for example, food poisoning or allergic shock soon after eating at a fish restaurant. The claims of a nerve agent and Novichok seems to have been taken from the script of a British-American spy drama, Strike Back, which recently ran on British television, British and US television. The sole purpose of the Novichok drama is to implicate and damage Russia. As the former MI6 spook Alistair Crooks writes, "The evidence is besides the point. Here was an opportunity to close off Trump illusion of a possible détente with Russia. The narrative is all. We will likely never know the full story." Here's the thing, though. The media didn't fully cover this, but the person that Donald Trump has hired as his lawyer in the White House is not playing into the Russia nonsense. I mean, he's completely antagonistic with his idea of Trump and Russia. And Donald Trump is taking on a more hostile tone with people who are pushing this particular line. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because that détente with Russia becomes more likely with a Donald Trump that says, this is BS and you're not going to stop me from doing what I was supposed to do, or what I came into this office and said I was going to do on my campaign. Meaning, I'm not trying to have this conflict with the Russian state, with the Russian government. He wants a détente. He's much more likely to have the détente if he says aloud, This is bogus. You guys are trying to delegitimize my presidency. And yes, I'm still going to do what I said I was going to do on the campaign trail. You guys can go fuck off somewhere. Him hiring Joe DiGiovanna is a tonal shift. And it makes this kind of détente more likely. Now, Britain taking this particular position, I don't necessarily know if they're doing this purely from this kind of geopolitical ends where they think Trump is going to have a détente, so they want to hit him in the knees. Theresa May has her own problems that she's trying to deal with. So it can fully be from local politics. Understand, if you're looking across the pond and you see the hysteria that's taken over in America, the Democratic Party has used this as a way to obfuscate from their own failures, foibles, and fuck-ups. If Britain, which I said is always a shade lighter than us, looked across the pond and saw that this was working in the States, I've always said that the Tory party is essentially the Democrats in the United States. Would it be above them or would it be beyond them to scream out something else, this kind of wag the dog scenario, to obfuscate from the things that are now presented to Britain, especially if she believes her prime ministership is at risk? Fact is, when people get tough, when countries are being threatened, they often tilt to the right. They often tend to be a little bit more hostile, a little bit more rough around the edges. And people who are on the left have a much harder time in making their case from a rational decision-making standpoint. It forces them to take on positions that they don't typically take on. Now, Jeremy Corbyn, I've said, needs to hold his shape and make the position for rationality. Even if the people don't necessarily take that particular position, even if his poll numbers start to go down, he needs to take the position of rationality. That's the position I think he needs to take. Fact is, the left is going to have to be able to walk through that particular door if they're going to ever make progress. Because in the same way that World War I, World War II were able to gut the left and the movements of the left, this may have the same impact if she's able to get away with pushing this narrative in this way. It doesn't necessarily have to come from geopolitical politics. This is purely coming from the internal politics of Britain. That's what I'm saying. Let's keep going. Yuli and Sergei Skripal were found unconscious on the afternoon of March 4th. The United States State Department says that its campaign to use Skripal incident as a tool against Russia started on March 6th, 2 days after the incident and 6 full days before the British government raised accusations against Russia. Let me read that again. The United States State Department says its campaign to use Skripal incident as a tool against Russia started on May 6, only 2 days after the incident and 6 full days before the British government raised accusations against Russia. In a press briefings on March 27th, the United States State Department spokesman Heather Nauert talked about the coordinated ousting of Russian diplomats by some Western countries. The Deputy Secretary Sullivan, Assistant Secretary Wes Mitchell, and many others in the building across the interagency's process have worked tirelessly over the past 3 weeks to achieve this unprecedented level of cooperation and also coordination. The end result, 151 intelligence personnel sent home to Moscow, is a testimony of how seriously the world takes Russia's ongoing global campaign to undermine international peace and stability, to threaten the sovereignty of security and of the countries of the worldwide. I'm sorry. I'm fucking this up because I'm getting annoyed reading this. That's all. I'm sorry. To threaten the campaign to undermine international peace and stability, to threaten the sovereignty and security of countries worldwide, and subvert and discredit Western institutions. I'm bad at doing multiple things at once. I'm really I can be awesome when I'm doing something that I enjoy doing and I'm interested in. I'm bad at doing multiple things at once. Those multiple things include me getting pissed off while reading this part. I hate hypocrisy. I hate it. I hate it when politicians are hypocritical. I hate it when news media is hypocritical. I hate it when news media takes on positions that are flamingly hypocritical. The United States State Department talking about somebody else destabilizing peace in the world. That's breathtaking. That's breathtaking. They should catch on fire while they're saying that. They should catch on fire in the process of saying that. Pointing the finger at other nations on this is mind-blowing. Let's keep going. I'm not going to go into it. The above question is from Naught's prepared remarks, not from more free-wheeling question and answer section. The British Prime Minister made her allegations against Russia only March 12th. It is clear now that Mr. Skripal and his daughter was poisoned with a military-grade nerve agent of the type developed by Russia. This is part of a group of nerve agents called Novichok. May's announcement was similar to Tony Blair's 45-minute claim, a lie concocted in a common propaganda operation with the United States government. As the Downing Street memo said of the preparations for the war in Iraq, C reported there was a perceptible shift, C report, on his recent talks in Washington. There was a perceptible shift in attitude. Military action was now seen as inevitable. Bush wanted to remove Saddam through military action justified by the conjunction of terrorism and weapons of mass destruction, but the intelligence and facts were being fixed around the policy. There were several details that debunks the Novichok thesis. The specialists in the British Chemical Weapons Laboratory in Pordendown, which gets millions from the United States military research dollars, did not agree with the Novichok claim for whatever affected the Skripals. May's phrase of a type developed by Russia was politically negotiated. And Ambassador Craig Murray provided, I have now received confirmation from a well-placed FCO source that the Pordendown scientists are not able to identify the nerve agent as being a Russian manufacturer and have been resentful of the pressure being placed on them to do so. Pordendown will only sign up to the formulation of a type developed by Russia after a rather difficult meeting where this was agreed as a compromise foundation. That is mind-blowing. That is mind-blowing. That means the people in the know, meaning the Pordendown scientists, the people who make chemicals, who do this stuff, who build things that can kill other people, they looked at this and said, we cannot agree with us. You're tilting us to fit your ends, just like they did in the United States. You're tilting us to fit your ends. You're trying to get a political point, and then you want to use science to back up that political point. We don't back up your political point. And then these guys are being pressured and pushed and cajoled into saying something around it that the government can lie about in order to make something a story. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. But was there really a nerve agent involved? A doctor who administered first aid to Yuli Skripal for 30 minutes was not affected at all. The emergency services suspected the victims had received an overdose on fentanyl. Dr. Stephen Davies, who led the emergency service of the Salisbury District Hospital, wrote in a letter to the London Times, Sir, further to your report, poison exposure leaves almost 40 needing treatment. May I clarify, no patients have experienced some symptoms from nerve agent poisoning in Salisbury, and there have only been Jesus Christ, that sounds so weird. There have only been ever 3 patients with significant poisoning. A court of protection judgment about the Skripals issued on May 22nd quotes a witness, a Pordendown chemical and biological analyst. Blood samples from Sergei Skripal and Yuli were analyzed and the findings indicated exposure to a nerve agent or related compound. The samples tested positive for the presence of a Novichok class nerve agent or closely related agent. Indicated exposure is rather weak formulation. It means that no Novichok was found, but decomposition products of something that may have been a nerve agent or not. A blood sample may test positive for all kinds of stuff, but that does not say anything about the amount or the lethality of any of the positive test elements. Novichok nerve agents are organ phosphates, many like the usual insecticides are. These break down relatively fast. A walk through a field freshly sprayed by some insecticide or domestic use of such product may leave similar decomposition products in the bloodstream as a nerve agent attack. The Court of Protection also said that no relative or friend contacted the authorities about the Skripals. That was evidently false. Today, 25 days after the incident, the police say they suspected the Skripals were poisoned from the front door of their home. Today, 25 days after the incident, they removed the front door. I believe that this decision was based on a mostly plausible story, guess, and not on material evidence. If the door had tested positive for a nerve agent, it would have been removed weeks ago. This is, like those people in high protection suits roaming around Salisbury, just theater. The Skripals were said to have left their homes at 9 a.m. in the morning. They collapsed relatively suddenly at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. This is 7 hours delay consistent with being severely affected by a military-grade toxic nerve agent. I doubt it. But even if a nerve agent of the type Novichok was involved, the jump to the allegations against Russia is completely baseless. David Collum is a professor of organic chemistry at Cornell University. He really knows this stuff. David Collum, I will say it again. Anybody who tells you this is a nerve agent must have come from Russia is a liar. A complete and utter liar. They are simple compounds. The Skerples are getting better. Good for them. But their resurrection from certain death is further dent into British government's claim of a nerve agent of the type developed by Russia. The whole anti-Russia campaign constructed out of this is just ridiculous and deeply dishonest. The 5-page propaganda handout the British government provided to other governments is a joke. It provided no facts of the case. To respond to it rationally as Russia tries to do makes little sense. The point that the article is making is responding to this in a rational way when they're being profoundly rational is somewhat pointless. She comes out a few days after something takes place. No investigation, no nothing. You've heard me say when they don't do an investigation, then the investigation is not the point. When they pivot immediately to the actual story of what they want to do, and they never did the investigation, that would mean that the investigation was not the point. Chemical attack in Syria. Donald Trump comes out and says, oh my God, the dead babies. This dead baby. Now, Donald Trump had already had several dead babies on his conscience that he himself killed based on his military attacks and his military policies. So, another dead baby, I have a hard time believing would bother Donald Trump. They didn't wait for an investigation. Donald Trump immediately fired a missile strike at Syria, blaming Syria for this. He didn't have an investigation because the investigation wasn't the point. Several months later, Mathis says we have no evidence that Syria conducted that chemical attack. Because it's most likely Syria did not conduct a military attack. They had no reason to conduct a military attack. If it was anybody, it was the terrorists that the United States was paying. With this idea that the United States wanted to attack because they were trying to dethrone Assad. When they don't do the investigation is not the point. When they pivot immediately to something else about what they want to do, what took place was a pretext for them to pivot immediately. The investigation was not the point. When she comes out and says Russia is highly likely, the Boris Johnson comes out and jumps the shark. Vladimir Putin did it. It's fucking Vladimir Putin. The investigation was not the point. The point was the blame. The point was the blame. Let's look at the last part. An editorial in the Chinese Global Times captures the utter disgust such behavior creates elsewhere. The fact that major Western nation powers can gang up and sentence a foreign country without following the sample procedures other countries abide by in accordance with the basic tenets of international law is chilling. It is. This is part of the reason I am bitching and moaning about this. Over the past few years, the international standard has been falsified and manipulated in ways never seen before. It is beyond outrageous how the United States and Europe have treated Russia. Their actions represent a frivolity and recklessness that has grown to characterize Western hegemony that only knows how to contaminate international relations. Right now is the perfect time for non-Western nations to strengthen unity and collaborate efforts among one another. Resurrection or not, the result of the Novichok nonsense would not be to our Western favor. He's right. The Western countries have started to create a reality of themselves. They made the choice to go into Libya and destroy it. It was just them. Unilaterally, Western powers taking the opportunity to destroy another nation. And in this case, Western powers coming together to make the decision to evict Russia and to attack Russia. This is not the world doing this. This is just a bunch of nations that have come together and joined themselves into this kind of unity among themselves, a reality unto themselves. So this idea of we can do whatever we want as long as we have the European powers to back us up. And if America was doing it by themselves, America would just do it by themselves. But I'm saying this is somewhat weird in the way that they're behaving. They're being massively hypocritical. Understand the massive hypocrisy in this. We destroyed another country. We destroyed multiple countries just within the last few years. We've invaded multiple countries. This is not part of our Constitution. The president is not a king. The president is acting like a king because Congress has abdicated all responsibility to rein in the president of the United States. That's here. Britain is trying to do something similar. Be very skeptical of the power structure of your government. That's what I would say. And I would say, look for evidence, not what they say. Whatever Theresa May wants to say, Theresa May needs to back this up with evidence. The fact is, this case stinks. This case stinks. And I hate this thing in a way that they're pivoting us into a hostile action without showing any evidence. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Whatever they're telling you, until they show you some hard evidence on this, repeat, there are no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I'll leave it at that. Let's see who's here. Dax Jacobson. If they did what we'd, wait a minute. Say that one more time. If they did that, we'd never go into Iraq. Zox Alex. If you have not seen the latest video showing how the media is a mouthpiece of the oligarchy, Skip Rock, Yifi Koa, your globalist. Oh, there you guys are going at. No UN investigation raises all the necessary questions and answers. Rosenfeld. They don't care about the investigation. The investigation is not the point. Like, honestly, when you're looking at political behavior, it's more important to look at what are they trying to do, not so much what took place. Like, and I know that sounds a little weird. What's taking place is a pivot. It's a pretext. We're not in a time, in a political season, where we can trust power. It needs to be held, you should be skeptical of power. Institutions that are in place are not self-justifying. Meaning just because an institution exists doesn't necessarily mean that institution should continue to exist. War, issues of war, conflict, those things are vitally important. Human beings are vitally important. And if you mean that human beings are vitally important, that means human beings everywhere, humanity, is vitally important. We are magnificent fucking creatures that can do amazing and terrifying things. We should not be destroying life in the way that we destroy life. And we should not hold it in this frivolous way, going to conflict on these frivolous items. They should be held to a level of skepticism. This was the same government that jumped on with the United States for weapons of mass destruction. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They lied. And think about what that was like during that time. Think about the media. Think about the television shows that fed into this nonsense. Think about the British soldiers that leveraged their bravery in order to die in that country. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and they're doing the exact same thing again with this pivot. Be skeptical of your government. Jeremy Corbyn is trying to take a rational choice or rational action on this. You have another option. You have another option. I would not trust Theresa May as far as I can throw her. Microsoft technical word. Are you guys crazy? The world is clearly flat. I'm sitting on my back porch and it's clearly flat. Oh God, you guys are talking about flat. Have you considered why Russia and the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Australia, and the United States, all which have deep space monitoring telescopes, have been acting strangely? Now Japan is rebuilding its army. Dark days. They've been acting strangely because people have been building shit on their borders. We should stop giving aid to third world and depopulate it. We need less people in the world, and we should start by stopping the third world from reproducing. Jesus Christ. We're talking about the United States, talking about a war with Russia, and you're talking about depopulating the rest of the world. Okay. I'm going to disagree with you on that one, Skip. Mankind is a disease. No, mankind is not a disease. Mankind has a tendency to fall into certain thought forms that fuck it up. You must understand, people like to think that they have free will. For all intents and purposes, you're functioning within your game space, within a system. It just so happens that within a system, it has so many conflicts that it tends to incentivize people towards a certain amount of hostility. That's all. I mean, it's not that people are fundamentally flawed. If people were in a better system, people would act a different way. It's the incentives of the system that you're in. All intents and purposes, you're still functioning on this level of survival, just getting your needs met. What do? when you need to make sure that you have a house, you have somewhere to eat, you have somewhere to stay, you have some kind of sense of fulfillment, if that's even possible in this particular society. What is it like to work 50, 60 hours a week in this kind of pressure cooker environment and barely still having access to get your ends met? What is that person like? What is the stress associated with something like that? What is the stress associated with medical bills or college loan bills? I'm trying to get across, we are living in a hellish, stressful society. This is the only society you know, so it's difficult to kind of look and say that this could be better. This is not indicative of the behavior of man. This is indicative of behavior of man in this particular society. That's all I'm saying. I'm trying to make that point. There is a difference. If the person was living in Vulcan or the person was raised in Japan, feudal Japan, those people would be fundamentally different. The things, the drives, the incentives, the things that are put into them would be different. It's not that mankind is a disease. It's the society and the capitalistic system, the socio-economic system that the human beings have decided to organize themselves in. That's the disease. If we were organized in a different way, we would have a different outcome. There's no such thing as utopia, but it would be a hell of a lot better than this. Jelly Donut. Did anyone bear responsibility for Flint? What are we talking about? Responsibility at the level of the White House, which makes decisions when 100% of the thousands die or a negative influence induced. Dark Days. The delay eating humans for 75 years, and that is ending. The rich have mostly moved off-world. They don't care about us, and they return to pick us off like Defenders aliens making Apple pickup. What? Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. All right, you guys are in the fucking weeds. All right, I'm going to end this. I want to talk about the Israel thing, so I'm going to end this. This video is going way, way, way too long. I hope I made my point on this. Be wary of your government. Be skeptical of your government. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. If you don't think that these guys would lie, there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. You can go down the list of things that were either false flags or that the government lied in order to create a pretext for war. So, be skeptical of your government. I'll leave it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks everyone.